talngim oh you tarawra wadal balula lembalti karen
malung total Chinese to bet malung total mera regulado com sbilton in مقدوك مورين ستالشر جدل تياسل واجل لغة تشينيس تياسل لغة تيم ايوان الابيسود تيال البريوس الايسي ويرا دو مولة تشينيس دو شاسوس المرا اي بدول مرقلاي بيلون ما ابرقلاي بريسيدنت وفايس بريسيدنت ماروغول موتلين يا محمد الله قال لورا امت ما راب الواض ما قال ستيت Ito gubet mal lungil tutau mora rugul adal rablun los iltunin oren setial siorgi del tutau el tutau ngari ato gubet sel okya argid nga aurora tiale England ngariya ya senteram lo sol lo balmel nga mudu regel gora tora orle lamrand ma senteram lo sol ngul memo ngoli sakatigal adad el la semgrado el lamrand do subo makora di ngul morsegi de al mutel mo ko makael sio ka ni sel doral medio programa rigi oy mawera do lo molme dibo wa sengaria imol announcement tia announcement tra tora urur agora rif sentera o sigra tal adel mo ongora el malibong gora bol madal celuro ratora climate change grant mo ongora seguir grant el gira tora aurora climate change etial grant al tobdini sel Palau Pacific Island Regional Climate Assessment malibong PICRC PICRC tia phase 2 kada mlamo mereka sel facial matia mo face 2 melan shogol ngegi del adal mo o uror tagi del lo tauto tagi del quantum mur tagi del uror climate change tial aurora mo o mo simra o del gabsingila el along al buil el arrak ya mo basura aurore ngal adal lo signin mo uror tial agora representer ya ngidil ad ngari aswal pora go magalom so del tial uror amas el dimos el website tra a PICRC Miguel ora muy como galo so del teluror malwai sengal o kari al tutawa nga toktang la tigel la set un PhD Dr. Adriana Humanes nga adiakal ketengel merbela o adiakal ketengel mertial show tiagi del mertial show la gamong del time ringil mertial show endi salgo tolo mo merbelau etemle sera a 2017 seguide tolo mo mel motmok rawrerir e ogore tiagi del me o el amrande malas mo gora gen kugel musisi il mogel amrande tagen kugel ngel amrande musisi il selo tura kel de la da valoral morbab matamlo o mangategi de lo matamle start sa 17 e gore mo el mutelme 20 el mutelmon e bigose ti algo correr agora riflo ascenso del el gora am suba gal gagros el tetele la orlel ma orlel la amrand el malat ketial kel de la dabel dimral morbab e agul giti asay qagale se el mutelme mumtren trigal wal gora oli sakal tigal ngalgede tigal adra center el momdu el motmok tagi dulur ma ul mangatya la so welcome back to the show, Adriana.
Thank you.
I just introduced you last time. We had last time you came to the show, I believe we were talking about research corresponding for the month. I brought Uli and Mangyao last time to talk about their capacity building in this coral spawning, and I'm happy to be able to secure 1 hour of your time to come here and then talk more about this coral spawning, because I believe some of the detailed information we must have not covered. And so with that, your brief history, I already mentioned that you've been coming to Palau since 17. But for that, maybe I'll yield the floor to you so you can explain through that history about the coral you're spawning now. The history of we came to 17 and then you plant and then now you're seeing the same. Maybe I'll...
So thank you very much for the opportunity, Asap, in the radio station. So we've been coming since 2017 to Palau to do research on the heat tolerance of corals and how much of this trait is actually heritable, how much is genetically driven. But most of the time that we have come is to conduct experiments. This time has been really different and amazing because for the first time we had funding to train the staff at PICRC on how to conduct coral spawning. Also, the fact that the aquarium team has grown now and we have 8 staff members, I think it is, gives a lot of opportunity to train a big team, considering that it is such a demanding activity and to conduct.
Right.
It's really hard to predict when the corals will spawn, so we know the month of the year that they will do, and it is really much more straightforward to predict when they will spawn in the reef. But when we have to collect the colonies and bring them to the aquarium, when we transport them, they get a little bit stressed. We're taking them out of the sea, and we can disrupt the time when they will spawn, so they might spawn 1 or 2 days later than what we predicted. So it's a really demanding job because they spawn during the night, so we still need to keep watching them to be able to do the crosses between them.
Okay, ngumalo ko Adriana lo say atemne muloro sa 17 elme emrutiang. I believe in 2017 when you came, you conduct this experiment and you did spawn coral, so you brought the larvae to the tank, and for this spawning, the corals that was spawned in 2017 are now adult. So that's the way, yeah. Oh, imong maloko lo sa 17 emrutia hydroxysil experiment hindi ko tim letir. Ogore en mil lamran de tamaigel ngelgel mora nursery melay gagi del guklo tren tigal ngelgedra ringia agel mlamo adult mlamo sa elomel maloko lo sa ngora mlongol tangtela sa mlania mlosil ora secure sa seludo del elal rak mosib edel mosib illo uro lo tigal adra aquarium rigid el tren tir el mosib murut tagid الطورة أور اللي لامراندا نديرك الملقول لسي مال لويد لوريور بتوع تلنك تنيل مع أقول تشالنج سرين مال لويل شل بتوع الأذر إنبول برين ملا تملا ترين تريجيد الأذر أكواريوم المرود تيد لوريور إني ديرك الملقول كمو نديك الغرام إيجا سلهم إلنا كلبسي مقدر مال ملو أراتان كسر بارا أكواريوم سنتر يقول جريد الغار سيل الربور بلو مس واسين غوم ال يسل بول ستارت واسين غوم الله يجي غير الكميدر على سلتي كلول تانغ لورا ذا ستال مغير الماي بيو بالغرا تارات مولو غوم ال سيد مسير غالكتا ما جيل نسلا وابول الدول رادي ايمول باسيو يسل بول مودلا جيل نسلا ايمول باسيو ما جيل سوسويل سيل سبرم المفرتلايز قال غايس سيجي تيرا مالمي ميكس تميكس قال مواصل كلوريور أمورات تقوم مم إلى غير إنقرات تيبل بيوتادو وبنجل لنعرا نيتشر ما يجلهم سوبرا بيفور المسرا أرول غير ملا ممكن شيء ملول وعرا تلا كلوب سيروري ورا جيروم إلا يجان أقول أول ذايتا لو سيسيو كورا كونسيستنت سيجد الدين نيل نعرا أبلوال لهم إل إندي قال مرا أقواري معلوم تيبل مو ويدل ملغول وسي سل أوبون مورا ضاب يملتقني رأيت تون مسجورة تنقرار باي madil kul chance tial maori arwa Berius ma eyo maral ngatial dal dabra al selatang sayigideng to moral aseng gora wal stress gora walo ndia lo bang lo gora wal medep sel schedule til masayigideng mari kwartil sel club saying so you're saying once the stress because of the transport, you put them in the tank. That means every night you're gonna go over there, like before the full moon, and if there's nothing, you wait some days after the full moon, like that. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
Whereas in the wild, they usually have a consistency of spawning. Eh?
Yes.
Okay, seguido, malgor seguido la say. Selang almem stress, ang magiril mora. By the way, so. Now we know the corals spawn a couple of days after full moon, right?
Yes.
But then, of course, you're going to bring this mother back into the nursery. And so that means before the spawning days, you have to go ahead of full moon and collect these corals into the... You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so we have been conducting the spawning since 2017.
Right.
And when the full moon, usually they spawn with the full moon of March. But this year the full moon of March was in the middle of the month. And then some of the corals are not ready yet to spawn them. It's too early for them. So some spawn in March and some spawn in April. The ones that hold the eggs and don't spawn in March, they are quite ready by the time that the moon arrives in April. And it has happened to us in 2 occasions that we have missed the spawning in April because we thought that it was going to be 4 days after the full moon. But they did before. And that's why we collected earlier this time in order to avoid missing it. But that means that as soon as we collect, we have to keep monitoring every night to see if they will spawn. So I said that the corals were stressed, but it's not. We don't see any signs of stress in there. They are completely healthy, and we have them in really good conditions in the aquarium. It's just that they don't spawn when we know that they should do
supposed to spawn
in the reef.
Right.
So we think it's associated to the stress. It's really different, a tank, an aquarium tank, from the reef where they live.
Right, exactly. Oh, yung kagi din mo ko la say ngaria erul time lulus pela sang momelo ingrang. Rasel ful misring lem because ang kagi del kora ongtel elang mo ko la say sel full moon ra blolom el sel full moon ra March. You said they usually spawn after the couple of days after the full moon in March. Mela say gidra era bol full moon ra March. Itamlo maigal el maranda el malmei engariam el madimlak egel baby ramanan del dimlak lo label mei seral check itamlo modila say aiga al amo el ra April mangmalgo la setyaigi del lo long tel mea ndak da salo aseng stress ling aiga healthy maranda indi saygi del wasay ngadi kul chance tal maori ngira wa Berius ma ora eyo ma light maraleng kadam langun me segura tang masaygi del ngal may ang agiril bekel gab singel ma umak sing udiluron bekel gab singel bor serangal elom clock matarbor mabdula 3 o'clock le mesa singariam elri leng saygi gul gon yal sum ngariam el lega da garro ko adin al sela clock tangke mesel suma imoriam el emlamo giril loktobdil sugura gem giril taray مسلم إلا قال نيشل الدول نرى تراي موال بيوتا غالك تا قال نيشل مسوسويل. And so it's very interesting and sometimes people might wonder how do you know this coral is gonna spawn?
Yes. So when the corals are gonna spawn, the eggs look ripe. They change in color. When they're not ready, usually they're really white and pale. But when they're ready to spawn, they become red. So the way that we know is we check the colonies in the nursery or in the reef by breaking just a small branch in the middle of the colony and see if we can see the red eggs. If we see the red eggs, then that colony will spawn that month. And then we collect and bring to the aquarium. And after they have spawned, then we return them to the reef or to the nursery.
Oo, yung wasa selbol lasing ay kakalebol umilir albuil, ito mong ta-check. Ta-check lo sa nga regel ngisir alsel. Ang also mga niya ngay sa dindir ng mga lew, embulwa sa dindir kalbol ready lomel. Also mga niya ngay sa mlamo barkar, esay dem mlamo ready lomel, matamal mer nursery tamal mer sayid bakra sentere, gigil tangan ng bakra sentere. Mot ko sayid di blok mer smodi asay. Bekkel gab singel wala mom todong oklo ome sa sing meel ndiak. Yal bebileng ndiak la meeleng tayid dul ko ni asay. La tayid long tel maram ko ra wadu dul musimri mun ko ra awal soal madep tel arlel ndiak do tangi. Ngam dire ndiak sal manila asay. Stress ngarang di to moral asay sayid mo ngot adbel marogu maul mung possible mo dakal lom el gorol tilak sel temer al ngaramral bulwal. I really I'm happy that you're here to build the center's capacity on coral spawning, and during the training, is there any particular moment or insight that kind of stood out to you?
Yeah, so during the training, I cover all the steps for coral spawning, from identifying the colonies that are going to spawn in the field until we will settle the larvae in artificial substrates that we later will transplant into the reef. And what really stand out was the fact that we are working with animals, we're working with wild animals, and it's sometimes there's many challenges associated to it. And the staff really understands those challenges, the people at the aquarium, because you guys are constantly working with animals and it's hard to make them do what we want, right? So when we went in March, we were planning to do all the work during March, but we couldn't find that many colonies with eggs, so we have to change the species. So the colonies in our nursery were not ready to spawn, so we had to go to the reef to find new colonies that were ready to spawn, and that was hard actually because not that many were ready, but the team was really enthusiastic and did a huge effort in trying to find reefs that had colonies that were ready to spawn. Also the fact that the whole team is composed by members with different backgrounds, but all of them got the knowledge on how to do all the process, and they were extremely enthusiastic. They did a lot of good questions. They're understanding the whole difficulties of conducting this work and how challenging it can be, but also how good we can be, and how by doing little changes or taking good care of every single step that is involved, we can be really successful in producing corals. For example, in the last month, we produced 250,000 larvae that we have now settled, and I think this month we will probably produce the double of that. So it's big numbers of corals that we can produce with these techniques.
Why say? Oh, yung malo ko ngal toktang lo sa sel ko mal mlawil arung rungit tagi dir luror ngora wi de to atlang til marang ding ngora mal wil arung ngo se tirgal adra sentel bel trainer til a ore ding wal gora ngariya ta atelgib cloud ngir tira tetelela ogrulela amranda malube tabdela saygal maranda arm titwa do mgrul ngora wal ngariya gora atelgib cloud ngir til akor orang sini mo malat kasi kilong mle gdingilun mel metren ra adal pal gatengel mo murut amran marang amal mringil hindi sel ko mal wing lanu ni asi tirgal adal nga sentel ngarin siru atip cloud ngir ya osi siltam etamal sembrial kor ogera gere ogera kor ngilger mung sil nga segide ta discuss ka yung sel build the sel wal kor mo wil tetelela aogrulela mara ay gagid ni sela amranda hindi regan mo ko lasya tial tora ogro la manda wa sel malungi dire lo amal mlosoal gira tar adra center tamlama mangat mok legal ayero guil ora trang tingil tialurur nda ga se mal di mo amran del me om elri ayero guil gira la sei magrado mesa amran del ma se el om el to gatlang tingil blol druring tiagil training. You mentioned some challenges during the, like the lab. What are some of the challenges that you encountered during the, the lab work?
Yes, during the lab, rearing the larvae requires some scientific knowledge. It's not that complicated, but you need to follow like certain steps to do the fertilization and then rear the larvae, and you need to know how to maintain the conditions for the cultures when the larvae are still going through development stages from embryos to larvae, and then when they start to swim. We keep them in tanks that are enclosed, they don't have flow through. So we do have to do a lot of husbandry to maintain those larvae alive, and then also later to settle them. So one little mistake with increases of temperature, for instance, in the tanks, can make all the larvae die. And it's just by knowing those little details that you can be successful. So it is important that the team is aware of the importance of following those steps and how challenging it can be to produce the corals at the end. It can be, if you follow the recipe, you can be really successful, but if you miss one step, it could be a total failure. Yeah.
Okay, yung sel ko ramal el wal titol gil tegi de tora ogro ramranda. Ng malgol wasing mlam katmok lagil el gorawal el daw el gil lol tirakle sel ko telmel ngara next step. Ang malgol wasing segit sel wal al gola mal ay titol time el endrig mel legal maranda malgo del daw mong مليسي السيد الترين تيجي الأذى ده المليسي السيد التقول واسي مال ده قال جريد المسرة أقرأ إيمول تنتين لقال قاروس الضوء لسيد المسرة إيمو إن سبيل كالتان قاسئل والمتمال الروجين ang malgola sing ko rawa dorular wa qal sim ngani ko recipe gede falorin em itiatal recipe en ngasel mo mar sel galending yakal kita telam temul indi sel ko meng example wa ise indi sel de belang islam rand indi ka do ra sei ngasel el mo survive ba bil indi ngora me itu tundia sel misrana ke step set ya rogil tangra ni islam rand dadi mat meng important se agora mal sol stress ni sei trigal adra sentera mal low roll to roll mal falo ay gidel gora sel protocole sel tretele la dorura. You also highlight can you also highlight the importance of or exciting development regarding the understanding of genetics? You also work with genetics with this. Can you talk about that a little bit so we can have some sort of
yeah, it is like currently with the mass bleaching events that are happening worldwide, Palau hasn't been impacted yet by any of those heat waves. But in other sites, we are seeing huge mortalities, and then the populations get really small, and the genetic diversity in the population is reduced significantly. So using sexual propagation, where we mix genes from two individuals, from the mother and the father, is really important to maintain that genetic diversity. Even though Palau is not going through that, always increasing that genetic diversity, that mix of genes, it's really important, and the doing coral spawning allows us to do that. So it is a great tool to have. Training, a lot of restoration techniques focus on using fragments. which is great, but they only use fragments from a limited number of parents, and those fragments have the same genes of the parental colony where they come from. So there's the limitation of just producing clones all the time from the same parents. So having a combination of both techniques for restoration, it's really important.
Oy, maloko tokta lo siya sel du mas splitting ngel maklolo mlokwela marandra blulat. For example, la Florida ma Australia last year ng miltamal milakwa marandel ng maldim lo makasaya. Malolo ko rin nga kasi seldo olar elela marandel medo label malalm en sabel toy. Ding wala wal limited seldo dula seng ngakro sa sel maranda. Ngagidil mo ko say ngal maranda seldo mul medo li engira del mix ay gamong mo tokol kakro sa resela tokol kakro sa maranda. Mungwabol close cell mo close cell diversity mo close cell البطاقة البذنجل لسه close cell البطاقة البذنجل سيجي لو الغورين تقول عن عبارة عن generic diversity البطاقة الغروس المران ده سبب المغرول هذه برضو special وقتها ترى لنسأل لورور جالو دولا سي قدمون يجي guk kamaduk laba milangar deng ibel repta bertak la dangal memalal semen sebel ending al sugu munguk timle imol badengel amaran da kamaduk lamingari emdelemi enguk ti segi badengel amaran da amaral beklol munguk ti tal badengel amaran malol goring ase segi del dangal medom elle dogora mixaigal الرسير en mo sebel tob da abtog la garus badengel amaran se agora da ital lol goringin when they invite you to come to Palau, what's sort of the ultimate goal for this training that you're conducting?
Yes, the main idea is that Palau, with the PICRC, becomes a leader in the region on training people to do restoration or to maintain reefs in the future, where we know marine heat waves are going to be becoming quite frequent. So the idea is that the center becomes a training hub for other nations. So the main goal was to train the staff so that they can learn on how then be the trainers for future participants that want to learn these techniques. So also, I think another objective and what I see for the future for the center is that sexual propagation is included as one of the lines of research and also of implementation of PICRC. Hopefully we can find money or budget to hire somebody dedicated to study sexual propagation of corals, pin out better the timings for different species so that we can diversify the number of species we can work with and produce more species that can be used for restoration or preparing reefs for future.
Oy, ngmel lo se ang erut to ko rawal lomes el training lunut mokring ako tengo sei ngoram le sa del trainer adra center mobol mudur ay gagid el tetel la oro lele ma okru le lamran de lo siga gel msisira el mosbelo lo togura aqlil de la da valor al morbab sea qot le sori wala trainer adra center lo va selul das así al sumar adra center amdu egel sibedel en mosbira adra center el direct trainer maybe adra gal state belau e algo qua mal successful en sed ma trena gal gora regional ma gonesha region gal bebira ayuns gora on certila sem grado el lambrande dom grol el girel selo sa loral mom gal da advela dobra a truing ra madad en egadat moklar gora du urgid sed el tralo siga gal marandra o ela gal marandra msisi la klal de mosbel lo tagay gal kle de la da valoral morbab se agot ya ongerunga lulugoringa aseng what's the second objective
To to have a research area in PICRC dedicated to.
Why say. Ang to lulo ringa ko say. Ngora swad malmol malba sentera ko direk moswal malmol mlosiga udod. Letia si elwabol loral mo kal dadab etegi toro la maranda amral mo tarawal tangal aurora ko al brief. Nya legal do ko dilu experimente closer ngeng guk model de adorutri. Moral mo tangal aurora ko al brief. Ngora sa kada malmol mo sigaw do trainer adle ngwaigel milgo dullo ko raw lele ngo uidlu ro spi aptokol im malngari aptokol adel malngari do se adel hara adel memlo ro focus mru tegdlu ro en wal sbel mokmok sbel wal lolmol malngari tegd program. That's a very good, Adriana. We really appreciate your vision, your time and effort on trying to build the capacity of the center people so that we can continue to keep this going, because in the near future, 10, 15, 20 years time, we're going to need this kind of skills and knowledge in order to continue to sustain the coral reef in Palau. And so I know you're nearing the completion of the training. How do you see the participant? Do you think, are you confident that they can...
I am super confident that they can do it alone. We have had now the spawning in March and now in April. And now in April we have had already 3 nights of spawning. Yesterday we had the last one that we had this week. But we're expecting more today and maybe tomorrow. And yesterday I saw the whole team already working alone. Without me telling them
good.
what to do. So that is really good.
Malung la arungur tigal adra center ta milel ra kasus ngari amran milel kasus idiral ngari amo el ra kapsengay mulgo la seng malung la arungur adra center leng seralbong tamal dimo ta salim el era dawalo ngela sei ngara gimrul ndakal bola se tangka bo mo ngaral me tang mo ngarang tang mal dimla sa el era da bredil kelpok la matadi tilmi be gel ngara ligang yang asigi de e walong karay gal marande mong malung la rungudra atyal te alem no se ngari awdo mo gal toktangal me mo li sakatigal ngedra orele la maranda mong mal it's ngungila rungudra meng sa sarngal gedam la mos il mrula rasentera la mos il wadil tilom el la marande. I understand. We're just basically talking about. Before we conclude, I just wanted to stress that I understand we're just talking about the actual training on coral spawning, but the actual training is not the only part of this training. I understand you went through different type of training. You wanna mention some of those training that this group went through in order to have a successful coral spawning. Yes,
we had a few lectures as well.
Yep.
And we discussed as a team how to improve the work as a team, to improve the relationships between the team, to maintain the conditions in the lab. But also we did some lectures on cost analysis, for example, on how to estimate how much does it cost to produce corals through different techniques, through fragments, through sexual propagation. We also discuss what are the processes that we need to follow after we have the recruits to outplant them, and what are the different survivorships that we can expect if we use different methods to outplant the corals. And we also are going to cover what is the measurements of success for this type of projects. How do we know that we have been successful in restoring a reef?
I see. Kel training adiral kada malungi larung dringiling. Hindi mo nakadil train tigal nga lagay lasing makaradong amanan del medo oli edo guru lang lagay. Tadiregal mo involve up to kakro sul tingil awro lasay. May lakad mal me el manex el bodom el. Ang makarabo do ne kasi ng tela ludo da kakar tagi the whole process. Tumno durusele tara exercise na sen cost analysis. At tara diregal bebirat ng tingil duro asay. makara masel do kurulira anu sirin klungang sel molal mria kargere makara omolal mria yegi beto katlang tingil training blol drul ligero guil mosbe rulit taluror mong wal successful ra orlel ilmora omel lamel lo dokyar sel wase ma omanggerngil sektu manggerngil wase godolmi egire lo mai sel monitoring la sengwara tial health dringi macro dringi lege important information bodo dringi la sei mangmal telar rakan telal buila marandal mi aklunga langaranga el anusri am la maklunga langaranga la moselom el tumno involve by rogul tial training mangmalungi la ruta toktal mosebel me mong serang leget le la selora lang kalmong en wa blabol girel digid la mo girel digid el murut tiagid lurol blol druri mangmalungi la mudra tial lurol longot moknya sentel especially malungi la ruta tigal ngalged el mosebel guk mamdura gaigid ma atara club se en sebel wadil gidel gego gidel mismo gaigid lureret el daga guk podo ongoy tawdo del lo el melara armudul ngara krel belaul me mosel wadil gidel motmok lagar muguk kora moklebe la omngi telawdo den kora wada seba expense mara anyway Adriana, we're coming to the conclusion of our show. Do you have any last word you want to mention before we close?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it is amazing to see the great capacity that the center has, the local knowledge that is there, and I think there's so much potential for Palau to become an important site to share learnings with other places that are struggling a lot with their reef, on how to use local knowledge and how to train local staff on tasks that can be a little bit more scientifically demanding, and how that can be easily applied to manage our reefs.
I see. Oy mulgo wadi mo mulmusuba toktal mulgo lasing maluna no tigal ngalged mo dur tagid again inswadru lital center mo mosbel gorawal ngwa lasing arada agora sea al sum somilo el lamran de borbelal mo agora reef center sea agora mal sadal msala in the future ngwa agora mo lo ngalged lasing agora reef center en sedel smu ba tangtila orlel ma agora el lamran ma direk lo mel lamel sea agora wal ultimate goal es el agora wal cloud el gora abro su sadlo mesin seldo rula galure del moral ata mentri ramadan en wabla bod qultmok sed اللي قاعد يدون تمقرب الواد مش قادر الغرا ولا سوا قاعد يدو ما كلاو اقلم دغي نالج سكيلز نالج المرا قال لي بورين ايلاند ده دي الهيلب تيل قلت مقلا غرغر تيل اللي قدر اقول مديك ما سالو لا غرغر بلاو الو لا غرغر ما يقول نيشا يا اضرب له تيل قال غرغر اسيل ملمول ملو الغري اوديمير ما قتنير غورا ديملي كده دوساو دي el show يقول هذه جا قد غرام مرمر ولا بورا شورجيد ما هم شغل ممكن تلتي على مريا سيلا رجول هذا المسئول تونين again يدي هذا الغرا سؤال curious را oh by the way now I'm just going to announce that whoever curious about coral spawning anybody from the community can come in tonight around 6 and just go to the bag and see how they spawn, right?
Yes.
Oy. Akora di dilli segid le sum ngari ador gora mlimli marun salmom da sayga pal magralo mel el algab singen girel mo mel mtmer sera elol muklok yang arsel guk mobdul atru klok raklab say mngil lomel pal sum ngari ador gora salmom dingna tetelesen el guk ko dio qadio mqal mobdul elol muklok e osigra tirga gidel adra mel logera security sangarget tigelo mel amrand ma security orar tin morsel baselom el amrand msbil guk mo dingna se o tiya tetelul saudria rasul waseng magrat tetelselom el anyway komal sulal no simil tunin nagdu koren setial taratang tingla a program rigi draurior agi medeng kwase kama taradra bulu ngarger magere mal gorawal tuira rangrir maklam ratilo sa gora du from mama sebel matmok lagal rol protect bulu mam bagi dire kal mal mo babla kareng gorma blakareng madu malas mo babla kareng matmok lagal roguluror el mosbel mo klungela bulwada loral mo kal da bela bulwada Mada ko man sulang etial shorgi del sen logotum ewal episode ra Bruce sen 94th episode adi merita mo musim masel guk melbel seel ko mal sulang
Oh you Tarawra wa talbalula Lembalti Karen El Malat Karang Aramaka Arangalage Balwa Magabe Klagarage